Well, hello, boys and girls. It's when I feel like 8 o'clock, and it's when we feel like 8 o'clock again at Pearlo Wisdom Industries. And we are going to have a great guest like you're getting used to right now. I can't call him a guest, he's a we. We are now part of this, and I'm part of what he does, he's part of what I do. We might even be doing some other stuff that we'll tell you about maybe in another video here pretty soon. Oh, I just lost you. But it is going to be, we're on a series that I've really enjoyed. And it seems like the listeners have enjoyed it as well. We're doing an NHL deep dive, and we'll probably do every team. But right now, we are basing it on, and this is Joe Borek. Did I mention you, Joe Borek? I should have. Borek is amazing. And you should know that by now. I don't know where you've been under a rug or something. This is Joe Borek, man. Come on. Okay, wake up. uh, we did Pittsburgh Penguins, and it's an NHL deep dive. Basically, we're looking at teams that got kicked out of the playoffs and where they're going from here and what they're going to do. And eventually, we'll do all teams. But the next team we're looking at is the reason why we're looking at the Nashville Predators. And the reason why we're looking at the Nashville Predators is because Mike Morreale, who is a writer for the NHL, in the bubble right now, he had an interesting quote there not too long ago, talking about David Poile saying some players aren't going to be brought back. We're not satisfied and going to make changes. We have to manage better. John Hines and the staff have to coach better, and players have to play better. And what we care about in this video is what players are going to be leaving and what may they do to replace them, and where's Nashville heading now in this in their future. Going by this quote, it sounds like a rebuild doesn't look like it's in the offing. So where do you think they're going, Joe Borek, and what are some options you think they have with this lineup leading up to, of course, going to be an expansion and the draft and all of that?
Yeah, they're just going to retool. They're not going to rebuild. They're not going to rebuild when they have a goalie that looked pretty good in Soros under Rene, who I still believe is going to have a solid year next year if they add to that defense. Like I said before this video, their issue going forward is not your top four. You need to add, especially with Hamus leaving, who wasn't the greatest anymore, like we said, but he was still a good, adequate 5 or 6 defenseman. You need to add to your defense and you need to add to your forward core, but you need to be smart about it because you don't have a lot of money until guys like Bonino and Pekka come off the cap after next year to give you more money. So, uh, I would say forward wise, I talked about him before we got on. Jesper Fast is one that you could potentially get if you could lure him to Nashville. And then if Connor Sheary likes the good old Nashville vibes, maybe you can lure Connor Sheary. You know, who knows? Maybe he really likes country music. So then he'll be like, oh, perfect, Nashville. So maybe Connor Sheary would work. But those are two forward options I kind of had off the bat because they're not that much. The other was, of course, just a guy I've always loved, a former Flyer. If you're just looking for a 1 year contract for a bottom 6 player, you could always sign Simmons for a cheap contract because that would replace losing Smith. That's just a good veteran on your bottom 6. And you have a very good veteran with Craig Smith in your bottom 6. But I don't think you're going to keep Smith because of the salary cap, and he's going to get paid way more than Wayne Simmons. So,
yeah, that's interesting. So we're definitely saying Michael Granlund's not coming back. I would have to admit, uh,
mhm.
and maybe not Craig Smith. I know they really like Craig Smith, but if he's talking about moving bodies out, re-signing free agents is probably not in the cards. Um, Now you mentioned two great names there, Fast, and Sheary. Sheary, I'm a little concerned with their size already on the wings. I don't know if I would be reaching out too much for Sheary when you got a guy like Rocco Grimaldi, who's a tough small player, but he's still a small player. And
yeah, I just think Sheary's more because Rocco's never played up lines with to score. Like Connor Sheary, when he played with Crosby's and guys, scored the 18s to 20 goals. I don't know if Rocco Grimaldi, he's a good tough player with some skill. I'm not sure if he's a guy that would do that though, playing up with skilled players. That's why I feel he could fit in because he could play on the second line if you want to. Because normally that's when he actually plays his best because he still plays gritty, but he scores a decent amount of goals. And then Grimaldi's more of a third liner or a fourth liner if he has to be. So I thought he could fit in for that perspective because when he played up lines, that's when he had that 23 goal season in Pittsburgh, and then he had that 18 goal season with I think playing with Malkin most of the time. But that's why I figured that could fit in. I don't know how much Grimaldi profiles as a guy you want to play up lines. But
yeah, I'm just looking at like Philip Forsberg is not going to scare anybody. Cal Yonkrock. You're on your third line. You got Rocco Grimaldi, who also is not going to 5'6", and then you bring in Sheary. It's just a very small forward group in general. Bringing in Sheary, I think they try to look a little bigger, get a little more size in their lineup. That's what I'm thinking. I like a guy like Josh Olivo there, 6'2". He's really looking for an opportunity. He did well in Vancouver, but they've got young players coming up that probably won't be able to re-sign him. You might be able to get him for $2 million for 2 years, 3 years, if you can convince him that he's going to have a really good chance of playing in your top six. I like the idea of Fost, but I think it's going to be you might have to overpay him to get him to come out west. I really think there's going to be a lot of people looking at Fost in the East. A lot of teams are going to be looking at him. I like him. I mean, if I could find a way to get him, the Edmonton Oilers, I'm sure, would be looking at him. He's a really good quality player that can play up and down your lineup. And I look at Tanev, what he got in Pittsburgh last year. I think Fost could be up for something of that 3.5 for 3, maybe even 4 years. I don't know if I want to go that long, and the reason why is because you've got an expansion coming up. This team does want to do a retool. I agree, like what you're saying. I'm not really looking at a rebuild here myself, but I think I want to hold off for next year. I don't think I'm going hardcore next year with this group. I want to see if Saros is going to be what he's going to be. He's 25 years old. This is going to give him another year to see what he can be. So I'm looking at a guy like Josh Olivo and maybe a Derek Brassard from the New York Islanders that at 33, you might be able to get him for the same money he was already making at 1.2 for a 2-year deal. Then Levo, assuming he'll come, I have a feeling a lot of people are going to be looking at Levo. He's 6'2", showed fairly well, almost at a half a point a game. I think there's going to be a lot of people looking at Levo as well. So he'd be a tough grab. Now, if you can't get those guys, maybe you're looking at Sheary at the end of it all, depending on how much of a contract Sheary wants if you can't find the size out there. But I'd be looking more that way at first. But personally, I think that I think it's possible. Here's a question for you. We didn't even talk about this before. Do you think it's possible that Poyle's days are numbered already?
Well, I think that's what I said before the podcast. That's why he made a statement like this, that there's going to be changes. He wants to revamp things, basically, is the gist of what you get from all his different quotes. And that's, I think, going to buy him some time because I think ownership goes, oh, okay, cool. We're going to try to switch things up a little bit here, and then this is his final shot. So I feel like if they come out next year and don't do well, then yeah, but that's also why I feel like they might go after Foss of the world, or because Vancouver's been rumored to trade him for a while now. If Jake Virtanen's there, they might try to go for him because if we're talking about guys that have upside, he's 6'1", definitely has some upside more. They might look to trade for him because he can definitely play on your top two lines. with some of your skilled players. So he's a guy that's a restricted guy, but has been rumored multiple times to be traded at this point. So he's a guy that I could see them potentially look at if they want to add some size there. But that's just another guy I had because he definitely would help. And I mean, restricted if you want to add size in terms of physicality, because we talked about them not having size, depending what the Rangers are doing, because we know from talking about it before on the phone before in different times, their cap's not the best with the people they have to sign. If they look to trade Lemieux, you're not going to have to give up a lot for him. That's an easy bottom six acquisition. That's a good player in the bottom six, a very good bottom six player. So that could be an option if the Rangers are not looking to pay like 1.5 to 2 million to one of their bottom six players just because of where they are in the cap and the defenseman and all they have to sign.
Yeah, I think you're kind of at least I think we're in the ballpark here of what he's talking about. Now, if he thinks his job is on the line, maybe he tries to go crazy. You know what I mean? Like maybe he just says, let's just reach for the fences and try to go grab a big free agent. But honestly, they don't really have much cap space.
No, they would have to trade people.
They would have to trade people. They do have 2 second rounders this year. So I like that Jake Virtanen thing idea. If you could trade like a second rounder, and that's the other thing, is they're not swimming in prospects, really.
No.
You know, but if Vancouver is really kind of done with Virtanen, and it sounds like they're on the cusp of that, maybe they'll take their chances with a player that has struggled for Nashville with maturity, that looked like he was going to be really good, like an Eli Tolvanen and a second round pick for a Jake Virtanen that they could put in the lineup right away. And you know, they've got a different group there. They've got a different group. They've got a more veteran group, and maybe Virtanen will mix well with these guys. So that's a good one. I like that. I like that idea. Something like that sounds like something that makes sense. They're not getting older. They're still bringing in speed and youth, but not rebuilding at the same time. I think that would be a very good acquisition for them. And then we've mentioned him several times. I think we mentioned it. Maybe did we mention it with Pittsburgh? And I really have a love on for Forbert, and I think he could work well in a lineup like this for a 5-6 spot that they, like you said, they desperately need. Corbinian Holzer is just not a guy you want to be playing.
No, he's a solid depth guy to have since he proved he could play probably like 20 games in a season because he played 50 games this year. But you don't really want him to play more than 20 games in a season. So you want to add, that's why I think they really ideally should add 2 defensemen. And Derek Forbert's definitely a very good option at 1 because Yannick Weber's a solid defenseman, but he's another guy that's more of a 6-7 hybrid. Like, you don't know. Some years he's more of a guy that can play as your 6th defenseman. Other years he's more of your 7th defenseman. And then Tenorti just started looking good this year. So you don't want to bank on him coming back next year as a guy that just started looking good at 28. I think he has a chance to continue to look good, but that's tough to bank on that as a GM, especially if we think your job's on the line a little bit and you want to get a good thing going here. So I think Forbert's a very good pool, but there's a couple other guys. If you want to add more physicality back there, you can have a lefty-righty complete physicality. Well, you would probably switch up your lines for speed, but you can add lefty-righty physicality if you get Derek Forbert and also bring in someone. I don't think he'll get paid 3.35 again because he had a solid season. If he'll get paid that at most, if you want to see how much Gudis will want to make, and he'll come out to Nashville maybe.
I think you're going to be surprised what Gudis brings in. I have a feeling he's going to. People get zoned in on his size and his ability. He can play on the defensive side. He can play against a lot of guys, a lot of lines and stuff like that. I think somebody's going to pay too much for Gudis. Yeah, I really do.
But another guy I had that I don't think people he's a solid defenseman, He's also 27, so you're not adding to your age pool here. If you get Joel Edmondson, he's unrestricted. If
Yeah,
Carolina can't keep him, he's
yeah.
6'4" from the left side. That would be another good pickup for them as
I
well.
got a feeling about Edmondson there. Something just seems to work well for that type of lineup. Not to mention he's from St. Louis, so going back west may not be a big deal for him. Uh, there's that Edmondson, yeah, seems to ring off the tongue well for Nashville. That's a
Yeah.
good one too. I could definitely see that. Um, I think they would be smart, and you brought up a very good point since we're talking about this now. I know scoring has been tough for them, but I think it possibly has a lot to do with their 5, 6. We just talked about it. Their 4, 5, 6 spot on defense was not looking good this year. They lost a lot of D, um, making the first of all the big mistake. And if he should get fired, it's that Seth Jones for Johansson trade that never should have happened. I understand
Oh
the
yeah.
logic behind it, but that was a bad
I would
trade.
say normally though, like I said before the pod, he had an unfortunate season
Mhm.
at home. But normally, I would say they're four deep because normally you have Yossi, Fabro, Ellis, and Ekholm. Where this year you just had Yossi, Fabro, and Ellis because Ekholm was very inconsistent. But
And
I
actually, I don't think Fabro
would
was that great this year as much as they wanted him to be this year.
he wasn't great, but I'm saying like because he's a youngster and you're going to excuse a 22-year-old for having some mistakes, you're not really going to
Yeah,
excuse a
absolutely.
30-year-old for having some mistakes. So
Yeah,
that's why I feel you could say Fabro had a good season to just continue to learn from, kind of like Peyton Manning. Actually, he didn't have the best season when he started his career. In some of his, he was in his first season. Fabro being his next, but still, I like the kid. I think he's going to be great. I think Ekholm is what needs to build on. He's the guy I think is going to come back good next year. That's why you need two guys because you don't want Holzer, Carrier, and Yannick Weber being your only options in your top bottom two lines. You would like to
yeah,
have, like we said, Edmondson's Forberts of the world, anybody like we have. We mentioned Dylan DeMello before the podcast. He had some ability to assist the puck too. He's only 27, so he's not old either. From the right side, so I like him a lot. I think he would be a good pickup. So there's a lot of guys that they could pick up that would add to their bottom pairing pretty well. And if Hayden Fleury is potentially on the block, he's a good guy to pick up, obviously, in your bottom six at 6'3". He's only 24. I know Carolina has things to worry about with their re-signings and stuff in the future. So if they look, and they have a good defense. So if they look to add some more assets in terms of offense, then that could be someone they look to move. He obviously has size, but I think he'll stay in Carolina, but he's just someone that caught my eye. He could potentially be moved just because he obviously has value and he's a young player that I think would be happy. Poulin would be happy to take a chance on, saying he wants to retool and revamp the team. He definitely doesn't want to rebuild it. So,
yeah. Well, I mean, you definitely don't want to rebuild it when you've got
mm-hmm.
Roman Josie in his prime.
And
Alice,
Shane at 8 million too.
yeah. Well, yeah, and several other things with that lineup that
Mhm.
say it's not time to rebuild. But mostly for me, it's having Roman Josie in his prime. I mean, that's silly to rebuild when you've got a defenseman of that magnitude there. You want to build around it and continue growing. Um, like this trade deadline is going to be interesting. There's going to be a lot of people you can add. So I have a feeling Poyle, if he's not worried about his job, is going to just like sort of add little pieces like this and hope that Nashville can keep it close up to the trade deadline, and then see where he's going to go from there. Is he going to use some of his draft picks to add to make a push, or is he going to wait and add some free agents at the end of the year, which there could be tons. There's a lot of options right now. If you're in a retooling place right now, this is the time to do it. Rebuild even better, because with the expansion coming up, there are going to be a lot of players that people just can't keep, and they're going to want to get something for them, and you probably won't have to give too much up to get them. And I have a feeling Poyle, being the experienced general manager he is, he's going to see that and do something of that nature. And it sounds like you're probably going on the same path there.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. That's something they're going to continue. They're definitely not rebuilding. Like we said, they're going to retool and they're going to add. I think there'll still be a good team next year because I still believe, well, I believe UC Soros is going to be a solid goaltender in himself. And if you add to your defense, that's going to help your scheme. You could tell Hines was trying to protect the goalies more there. But like we said, when you don't have a good, consistent bottom pairing, that's not going to fly in the postseason. So tightening that up, I think Pekka will actually have a solid season next year. I also think he's going to be a man on a mission because he knows he has to have a solid season because he's a free agent, and it doesn't seem like he has any signs of wanting to retire after next year. So I have a feeling that'll be a good platoon next year where both of those guys play around the same game. And then we're going into the playoffs going like we did this year. Well, blah, blah, blah should start. Oh, blah, blah, blah. And then like all me, you, Steele, and everybody have all different opinions on who should start because they all played the same amount of games, really. That's what I feel is going to happen in Nashville next year, most likely.
I think Soros is going to start taking over the reins quite a bit next year. But, well, that's an interesting take. It's an interesting team. Poyle, who knows? He has been known to surprise before. I mentioned it with the Jones for Johansson trade. Not many people. Well, we sort of saw it coming because they were having problems getting the center. I think he kind of overreacted there, but that's past now. The thing is he's known to make big trades if he thinks it's going to help his team. So we could see some fireworks here in Nashville in the next little while. Not really go our little safe route that we're talking about here. I hope so because it makes it fun. Our next team, I think we're going to look at. I'm going to say the Minnesota Wild. I want to take a look at them, what they're going to do. That's a very interesting team and how Bill Guerin is going to build that team and put his stamp on it from now on in. But for now, I've been Pearlo Wisdom. This has been Joe Borek, one of the finest writers in the land. And Joe, what are we doing? First of all, you can go check out all our stuff on steelflyers.com. That's a freaking awesome website. Go check it out. It's amazing. What do you got going on right now, Joe Borek?
I write for Pub Sports Radio, Overtime Heroics, and Flyers Nitty Gritty, of course, so please check those out, as well as my Sports Fanatic News YouTube that our True Philadelphian Sportscast is on. Love talking about all the hockey today. I mean, it's great talking about all these team series. The Predators are an interesting team to talk about, even though they don't get the biggest following. They're definitely a fun team to talk about with a good roster there that they just have to add, like we said, the pieces they need. And they might be something so fully to get over the humps, not just a good team. But so that I believe in them. I think they're going to do good there. I think he knows he's on his last leg. I mean, Pullen's 70. It's not like he's a young GM anymore. So he knows he wants to get another cup and he wants to keep pushing here to be a GM. I don't think he wants to retire anytime soon, it seems. So I think he's definitely going to do all he can to make sure that team gets farther and makes a stamp next year. Yeah.
Absolutely. He has no reason to wait.
Yeah.
That's our full 42, boys and girls. Thank you, Joe, for coming in. We're going to do it again. We're going to do Minnesota next. Be waiting for that. I hope you enjoyed this fine program. Hit the subscribe and the bell. That would be awesome. Help us out. And thank you for doing so. We're getting a lot of subscribers now. Also, thank you for going over to Patreon, which I'll put in the comment section, and helping us out there as we make people a lot of money on B-Pow Picks. Have a great day, everybody. Lots of love to you.